No. I am gonna speak. Okay. Hello. Good afternoon from the rainy Cambridge, and good morning to the other side of the Atlantic, to our friends from the States. I've seen that you are start coming, and today I'm going to have the pleasure to present a different kind of speaker, who is not a scientist per se, although he deals with science. He's an engineer with studies in business, entrepreneurship, things like that. Great honor and pleasure to present Professor Elias Carayannis, a distinguished speaker, a full professor of science, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship at the George Washington University School of Business. We are going to discuss about digital polyglots today, and we are going to have a nice discussion, I hope. Please feel free at the end of the presentation to raise your hand. You can even invite it and come to stage, present your question or your statement, and we are ready to go. The floor is to Professor Carayannis.
Please. Thank you, Theo. Good to connect with everybody. Appreciate the opportunity. And indeed, I'm an engineer, albeit in my mind there is very close proximity and complementarity between science and engineering. In fact, I will start with a brief etymological review or analysis of the word technology, which basically is the bridge between science and engineering in many ways. And this is, the word is, of course, from the Hellenic language, and it contains the terms and the parts about techne and logos, art and logic. And in the past, I used to talk and define, in that sense, technology as the art of science and the science of art. So we need both parts. We need to be both creative as well as structured. So without further discussion on that part, I will reflect on the title, and then we'll continue. Indeed, let me know if there are questions or anything else in the meantime, which hopefully we'll discuss more towards the end. Digital polyglots, this is, of course, an idea or a concept that relates to the fact that nowadays both engineers and scientists need to be, in effect, multilingual. And this is what polyglots, again, from the Hellenic language, a rendering of Hellenic roots, the word implies. So we need to be conversant in the digital world, and in many contexts and many dialects that actually relate to different disciplines. So the concept of cross-disciplinarity and even transdisciplinarity arises, and the need to really avoid type 1 and 2 errors, to use a concept from statistics, where you can have very tragic results and side effects if you end up having this misinterpretation. Now, the whole world nowadays with the COVID rapid tests is trying to understand what is a false positive and or a false negative, but this is exactly related to this. Years ago, we had a probe sent to Mars by NASA that ended up getting literally lost in space because the teams working on it were using both the metric and the British system, and they didn't realize it. And of course, the numbers meant very different things. So the title is about Industry and Society 5.0. Now, many of you, I'm sure, or all of you perhaps know about, of course, digital transformation and the Industry 4.0 paradigm. European Union last January issued a report on Industry 5.0, and Society 5.0 is really related and complementary, started in Japan a few years ago. Both of them are about how we digitalize our life and work in a way that is more human-centric, and the 4.0 paradigm is more technocentric. This is the difference. Lastly, and indeed being inspired and referring implicitly to the double helix, the DNA structure in our biology. I, along with others years ago, developed these constructs that we call this a quadruple helix and then a quintuple helix. Effectively, a helical structure, as we will see, that tries to keep together and focuses on the interfaces, which is related to the double helix concept and structure and the philosophy, design philosophy of nature to begin with, to optimize and maximize the knowledge and information transfer interfaces across the strands in the double helix. We have a similar motivation and conceptualization here. The 4 and the 5 strands, or pillars, if you wish, in our context, are the sectors in our life and economy: government, university, industry, civil society, and the environment. The idea is that they are all interacting and impacting each other, as we all know. So these are constructs to help operationalize the implementation of, as we call them, top line and bottom line sustainable solutions and policies and practices. Meaning, triple top line is about ethics, effectiveness, and efficiency, and triple bottom line is about financial, social, and sustainable and environmental sustainability. So here's a little bit of text on the motivation of what we're trying to look at here: the role and influence and impetus of artificial intelligence driving and enabling further the digitalization, the Internet of Things, and the other elements are very critical aspects of what we'll be discussing. And how
Professor Carayannis, sorry to interrupt. I'm not sure if you are presenting your slides. We're just on slide 1.
I am going through the slides. Do you see them now?
No, we just see the...
That's interesting because it says airmeet.com is sharing a window, stop sharing.
Yeah, but we see only your... now you're...
This is okay.
Please share your presentation on the full screen. All right, that's great.
Okay, and do you see the next slide now?
Yes, we are.
Good, thank you.
Yes, we do.
Okay,
thank you.
So, so I was, in any case, what I was referring to, and with the earlier comments, were aligned with the first slide. So now is the second. Thank you for letting me know. You can, I'll let you read the text. The important thing is that this is about transformation and possibly disruption. I mentioned the advent of artificial intelligence, issues of privacy, security, and of course disruption in our work and our societies is an issue that has become even more significant with the pandemic. And this is something that we need to better understand. I would like to give you a moment to reflect on that. And this is about how this can be looked at from a number of different angles. And I refer to the government, the public-private sector, the academia, civil society, and the environment. And this is something that, in a way, defines how we look at ecosystems and how, in our context, innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystems, and how we define the different networks and the different entities that may be connected with each other. And And of course, as far as innovation goes, we have this quote from Machiavelli. This is applicable to many different sectors, including what Mr. Zaharis called science before. There is actually a process, there are protocols, there are standards that both help establish certain methodologies and practices and help, of course, assure the quality and the safety and so forth. But all of these means and tools for operational excellence end up often becoming exclusive and impeding factors as far as introducing something new. If there is time later on, I have this observation, this reality regarding a context that may be more familiar with most of the audience, which is what happened with COVID. Under the pressure for survival and the pandemic depredations, there was a tremendous acceleration, both with resource, proper, sufficient funding, proper resource allocation, but also an effort and a clear and present opportunity for profit, I guess, also for the pharmaceuticals to develop a vaccine in 1/10 the time that was normally expected, and actually several vaccines, and so far most of them pretty much being pretty good. And a dimension of all that is what has been transpiring regarding the AstraZeneca vaccine, that is 1/10 the cost and price of some other vaccines like Pfizer, BioNTech, and so forth. And then what has been going on in terms of, the different, I would call them in quotes, games, and the resistance. The latest issue on that is the resistance to releasing the under still examination and to be, pending patents, but releasing them as a public good to cope with the challenges in India and actually through the mutations of the virus become a real threat for everybody else. So anyway, we'll come back to that, but this is about innovation and the challenges and opportunity.
Professor Carayannis, I'm not sure we've stuck on slide 2. You may use your slide presentation. Are we still on slide 2?
You mean, okay, do you see any slides?
In your PowerPoint, you may use your slide show.
Theo, I understand what you're telling me.
All right.
Do you see the slides moving now or not?
No.
No, okay, then it's an issue, unfortunately, some problem with the tool. But now we're back.
Now we can see it. Sorry, there's some delay. And sorry to interrupt. I have to apologize because there is a problem with the stream from your end, and that's why you are not in a video. So, but your presentation looks fine. You can start using your presentation, the slideshow. Slideshow, please.
Okay. Well, let me continue then. In fact, I was just talking about the Machiavelli, and you see the slide, the innovator and the enemies and the obstacles to innovation that one may have. Do you see that? Just to be sure. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can. You work in the slide mode or your notes. Mm-hmm. You may use the slide show on the right slide.
Yes.
Show.
Do you see them changing? Do you see them changing?
Yes, we have the video, but we see your notes as well. It's okay. It's up to you how to use your presentation. Please go on.
Okay. Well, this is okay. This is an unusual setup. I'm sorry about that. So let's see. There is a context about. I talked about innovation and Machiavelli, and let me see here because that thing. Okay. And then another quote is from Einstein on imagination and knowledge, and the Sustainable Development Goals, which is a relevant context for the discussion, and at least what we have been looking into, which is how, again, sustainability in its different dimensions and its different applications and contexts. The next slide is about the Industry 4.0 discussion and architecture that I referred to in the beginning, which is about the different aspects in a technology sense that make up this paradigm and this standard. The fourth industrial revolution, with Internet of Things, big data, augmented reality, cybersecurity, of course, but then also molecular or additive manufacturing and cloud computing and so forth. Industry 5.0 is more a technocentric to human-centric emphasis, as I said before, to become a little bit more centered to humans, not technology. And the Society 5.0, I hope you can see, it's a more emphasis on how society may be developing and may be understood. And again, what is the role of the state regarding policies, practices concerning education, healthcare, and a lot of other issues. In fact, one of the implicit indirect benefits, if one can call that, is the acceleration of the digital transformation during the pandemic because of the absolute need, requirement for social distancing and in order to continue, of course, our activities to the extent possible. We found that in many ways and in many regards, conferences or education programs or other activities, including, I think, to some extent, teleconsultation regarding healthcare services and so forth, is actually something that was always or already technically possible, but it became more so now, and more importantly, the mindsets and behaviors and attitudes of people changed. Now, the open question now is, with some degree of normalcy returning, whether and how we'll choose to maintain this element or option or approach, the digital approach in our lives and activities as individuals, and then also whether the different sectors that I mentioned, certainly the public and the private, will actually choose to put more, to increase or decrease the emphasis on the digitalization process and the status or standard that we're actually working with. And that is something that it's an open issue, and it relates, among other things, to the sustainability goals of the United Nations in an important way, because, for instance, whether we choose to reduce substantially our air travel or not will have a direct impact on the atmosphere and so many other things as well, in terms of local transportation and the like. This is something that is an open issue and it remains a challenge. Now, a couple of things more specifically to the quadruple and quintuple innovation helix ideas that I mentioned before. This is about, as I mentioned, assets, people, entities, whether it's public or private companies or other such activities that and resources that may connect and may in some way be allowed to engage in a way that is creative, that is constructive or not. And that is something that we cannot fully understand and appreciate in advance. Learning through experience and learning by doing will have to be the price we pay in a way for the things that we actually develop and the things we try. And the question about how that impacts the world around us is captured in this slide, where we talk about the democracy of knowledge as a concept, because how we become truly active and enabled stakeholders in this process of learning, exploration, experimentation, first of all, and then exploration and discovery has a lot to do with how informed we are, whether we're properly or informed or misinformed, and also how much we choose to engage. The more distancing we have, the more virtualization, the more significant that becomes. And that will come to haunt us in a way if it's not done right, and if we allow a concentration of knowledge and these social bubbles, as we've called them, to form and be influential in many different walks of life, so to speak, not just concerning politics per se. So democracy and ecology, for that matter, are both very precious and very endangered in a way, if I can call them species in the context of our discussion. So that needs to have priority. And within and somewhere between the two lies public health and, of course, education as an enabler of all of those. Now here, I am trying to show you the three helices that I referred to earlier in a form that shows how they come to be, and the quadruple helix encompasses the triple helix, which is government, university, industry, and provides a foundation, a basis to focus on and understand the needs and the aspirations and the expectations of civil society, that is all of us. So top-down policies and practices coming out of government, university, industry, points of reference, the different experts, whether it is institutional power or referent power and what have you, should always be leavened and shaped by bottom-up impact and initiatives from the civil society. And then all of that should be construed, should be conceived, designed, and evolved in the context of environmental considerations, which is the fifth strand. What is interesting is that this helical approach seems to have been increasing in popularity and use. It's broadly used within the European Commission planning and policies, but also in industry. You see here a company, Intel, actually, that has been using it for its to drive and shape its policies. Very large semiconductor company. Fraunhofer, which is a research institution. I happen to be one of the chief scientists in one of those, based in Germany, focusing on artificial intelligence and applications in the society and the economy of today. They also are using it. And this is a a three-dimensional gyroscopic, if you wish, view of those 5 helices. The reason I provide you different perspectives is because it would be useful for all of you to think about how this may actually be pertinent and interesting and useful perhaps in your context. Here is another one where you see at the heart of it, at the heart of the Venn diagram with the 5 spaces overlapping and intersecting is this concept of effectively a design standard that we've developed and we've been testing and validating over the years about ecosystems that are coopetitive, and that means collaborative and competitive. They're both spatial and sectoral. That means they straddle, they extend and expand across both different locations and also different sectors. And they're fractal. That means they're self-similar and they have the capacity to exhibit patterns of behavior that are highly nonlinear. And that also provides opportunities for targeting and leveraging policies and developing practices around those that I'll be happy to further review and discuss. Here's an example of how the different sectors on the vertical in this matrix, you see civil society, industry, government, and university exhibit or can be viewed at from a number of 4, in this context, lenses: technological, institutional, behavioral, and cultural. And really the focus here, of course, is, as I mentioned, innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystems, but also that is transferable and applicable to other contexts. And certainly it relates to technology transfer, and it relates to, as I said, entrepreneurship and the, in a way, the transfer and portability also of knowledge and solutions. So a couple of things here in terms of future developments regarding artificial intelligence, digitalization, and what it may mean for the future of work and society. There is a lot of concern about unemployment that will arise from the introduction of intelligent processes and tools, modalities, even in fields and professions such as radiology in medicine or law and so forth. There is a lot of opportunity for not just automation of routine practices, but also in a way perfection being introduced and enhancement of the analytical ability and the speed of that. At the same time, I am among those who believe that this will actually enhance the role of people. This is, by the way, also why we talk about Industry 4.0 and then 5.0, which is actually already emerging as a frontier, a more balanced approach that will not just seek to glorify technology, but make better uses of it for humanity. Now, the other point is the fusion of artificial and human intelligence. That has already been happening in some ways, in simpler ways perhaps, but there is also subtler ways that may be identified. Things like wearables, intelligent or smart devices and clothes and what have you. They may be able to monitor your vital signs at all times. They may be able to do their own diagnostics and interventions. We already have effectively laboratories that are miniaturized enough to be able to fit on a very small tablet that can be surgically inserted. So these are instances where this can happen in a way that obviously then these devices, whether they're tablets or what have you, they will evolve to become intelligent interfaces with additional both analytical and also predictive capability. And this is both, of course, very promising, but also raises questions about ethics and privacy and possibly safety. There is already cases where pacemakers and CPAP devices have been hampered with, and people can really get killed in that way. So another point is the convergence of democracy, knowledge, and innovation. And what we mean with quality of democracy relates to the extent to which people are informed, and they're also, of course, active, in a way, conscious citizens and participants, and then also in the process of technological change and development and what it means for them. And then also, of course, the question of how reliable, accurate, and timely, complete is that the data, information, and knowledge being shared. We've seen a lot of negative, I guess, side effects with intervention in elections and other things through social media. So this is, again, an open issue and an open question. In this slide that I hope you can see from a journal a few years back, we talk about our opinion that and how and why these constructs of the quadruple and quintuple innovation helix might help us both prepare for challenges and help develop conditions for better recoveries. And that relates and refers to better collaboration between the different sectors and coordination. And that, of course, pivots around communication. What we have seen, and just a brief mention on that, regarding COVID and the effort to control it and effectively reduce and abolish eventually the threat, we see that this is something that we do not, we should not have very good grades, if you wish, for the participants so far. There's been great successes, but a lot of opportunities also have been missed. There was both a delayed reaction in the beginning because of governmental choices and also lack of awareness and information being properly and broadly enough disseminated. And then we've seen a lot of unfortunate actions and behaviors regarding the production and dissemination of the vaccines. Now, I'll continue briefly with these slides on the industrial evolution. I mentioned the fourth industrial revolution. You see here, revolution rather. You see here over the years, centuries, if you wish, the industrial evolution. The first, the second, and third, and then the fourth industrial revolution. And we're poised in a way to go towards the fifth, where we don't just have cyber physical systems, but artificial intelligence enables us to really become truly, hopefully liberated and not enslaved. A reflection on the speed and acceleration of innovation and the diffusion of innovations. You see here over the years how much time it took for a certain technology to reach a certain benchmark, from 75 years for telephones to 1 month for Pokemon. Again, these are slides for the Industry 4.0 and the different aspects of the value chain, the productive activities and segments that process of digital transformation in the context, starting with Industry 4.0 and moving on to Industry 5.0 has. So you see how everything effectively is part of a chain, of a process that is connected, and how we try to digitalize the value chain of the entire enterprise, whatever that may be. That has significant implications not only for a given organization, but its entire, again, ecosystem of customers, suppliers, complementors, and its competitors per se. And that is something that we should be mindful of. Moving on to Industry 5.0, a couple of comments. Those in red are the ones to focus on primarily. As I said already, this paradigm will be focused more on interaction between humans and machines, And this will move improved integration, allowing faster, better automation paired with the power of human brains. And whether and how robots will play a role, the anticipation and the intent is that it will take a backseat, will become increasingly developed. And when we say robots, we mean all kinds of devices from the large scale to the nano scale, okay? And we could have home assistants, we can have devices that help us at the airport, but also we can have nanobots or devices that they can serve for executing nano-surgical activities or other even both restorative but also predictive even and preventive medical intervention. So Industry 5.0 will be and is going to be about the high speed and accuracy of industrial automation with the cognitive skills of humans. And this is something that is starting to emerge. This is not something that, and certainly the pandemic accelerated digital transformation, but I think it obviously targeted it in a certain way and has limited its scope. So that what we see here, that has been delayed in a way, this process. So it will be interesting in the next 5 years to see what will come to be. Now, as I mentioned, different fields, including medical, but also transportation, agriculture, and others will be impacted more or less over time in this process. And lastly, in terms of the paradigms, what may happen, an optimistic perspective is that we may end up, if people become wiser and greed and fear doesn't dictate actions and behaviors, we may end up in a situation where we have minimized corruption and waste, and we have the capacity to be very proactive, predictive, and preventive, including regarding diseases and other challenges, including the climate. This indeed is an optimistic scenario, but it is not impossible. And I refer to the Industry 6.0 paradigm in this sense, which would be more akin to the 5th century BC, the golden century of ancient Athens, where, of course, people were using slaves, but here we'll be using technology, and hopefully it will be our slave and not or servant, and not vice versa. Machines will design machines in that context, and there will be a lot of responsibilities and tasks and activities that we will not have to deal with. Hopefully, quantum computing and other such technologies and standards will allow us to, in essence, liberate ourselves from many things that we're still dealing with today that are mundane tasks, but very important ones, of course, not getting hungry and staying healthy and so forth. Many of these things, hopefully, will become increasingly supported by technology, allowing us more time to think and create. And this is the vision. This is possibly an era of cyber prosperity, as you see here. This is from one of my books going back to 2005, talking about smart development and looking at whether and how technology might serve to move us from natural scarcity regimes to artificial abundance regimes. Of course, there are many different ways progress can manifest, not always positive ones, and that remains a challenge and an opportunity. Here's another cartoon, if you wish, about artificial intelligence and perhaps the lack thereof in the human context sometimes. A few points on the actual differences and possibly similarities between humans and machines in terms of sensing data, environmental scanning, memory, creativity, and emotions. Obviously, emotions and humor and so forth are things that remain essentially human still. On the learning front, in the artificial intelligence context, we have supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. And these are, if one wants to delve into these contexts, important to understand, to put in context again the different kinds of activities and possibilities that AI allows us and affords us with today, whether that applies to research or it applies to innovation. It may help us really see patterns. I did identify, first of all, patterns that are not easily visible to the human eye, and then also interpret them and understand them in a way that may be extremely powerful. A lot of this technology has already been benefiting us. The acceleration of vaccine production certainly had to do with many tools of technology that came to the service of humanity. All right, and a closing slide with a couple of quotes from Plato, because that's, I think, still a very timely and pertinent issue. And I have two more slides for discussion as we're coming to the closing of the speaking time here. One is these links that effectively they refer to the situation with the patents that I mentioned. Germany is one of the countries that are opposing what the US and others in the WHO have proposed to convert and consider the vaccine-related patents as you know, abolish them in a way, or release them to public use as public good, as a public good concept and approach. There is pros and cons, of course, and I'll be happy to hear comments and have a discussion for that. And of course, the other side of this that may relate to our discussion and our interests is what I mentioned in terms of the acceleration of the pandemic, of the vaccine production to deal with the pandemic. This is not just in this case, obviously, gene-based technologies and vaccines produced on that basis, using such technologies. The messenger RNA, for example, is something that may change, as I said before, and this is an interesting theme for discussion, I would say, may change the landscape and introduce a lot more capabilities and options and opportunities for predictive and preventive therapeutics, not just fast diagnostics. This, of course, is something that is not new to us. The experience with different diseases that are infectious, and some of them, unfortunately, are coming back. And this, therefore, is a bigger game in a way. At the same time, as we know, the antibiotics are becoming depleted in their therapeutic capacity because of the our abuses and the evolution of the adaptation of the bacterial infections. So I'm happy to have a discussion. I hope there was of some interest. I'm sorry about the disruption with regards to the presentation approach. So if we had more time, we would have been better prepared to present. So thank you for your time and interest. Happy to have a discussion further on this.
Wonderful, Professor Carayannis. So many notions, so many different things. Let's say the fusion, I like it a lot, the fusion between innovation, entrepreneurship, and the biological, the double helix concept that you introduced in your quadruple helix framework. It's quite interesting. I have a question on that, but we can open the discussion for our attendees, for our guests. You can raise your hand or you can ask a question. You can even get invited on stage. Please go on. Or we can open the discussion that Professor Carayannis gave us, the two different topics to discuss on the patents in general. Okay.
Yes, actually, the patents issue is a very, I think, significant and broader issue in terms of healthcare access and availability, as well as the incentive to invest in R&D. But there is a lot of things that need to be more clearly, again, this is going back to the issue of the democracy of knowledge and so forth. People should be more fully aware and should be interested and willing to become more fully aware as to who paid what, because a lot of companies claim patents on products that to a great extent, because of the circumstances in this instance, were not privately funded. They were publicly, all of us as taxpayers, at least in the developed countries, funded the development of those solutions, those vaccines. And but that's not always the case, of course. And there is something.
When the patent comes, let's say, from the industry, from a pharma industry, or from, let's say, okay, some researchers may have some grants and develop the technology. Caricot, the mRNA, let's say, inventor somehow took so many years to have the utilization of her patent, her technology. What happens to this? How we can, let's say, reimburse all these people that they have done their intellectual sweat and give to the humanity those wonderful results? I mean, there should be a balance. What is your opinion and our friends on the audience?
Yeah, well, let me hear from the audience first. You said you have a question too, because I was trying to say something, but let's actually hear your question, and also if they have.
I have a lot of questions, but all right. My question is: you follow? We have, let's say, you follow the helix notion and the paradigm. We have the industry and the universities, or the let's say, the institutions that develop technological and scientific breakthroughs, but on the same time, either the governments, they have to regulate and they have to control, let's say, somehow, but the general public is not well aware, and sometimes, all these issues we had with the vaccines, we are somehow laggards and we don't follow the technology and the scientific, let's say, developments. How you can manage to create, let's say, this ecosystem, a societal ecosystem through innovation and entrepreneurship, but to have, let's say, the general public aligned with the purpose to become an industry and a society 5.0, because we have to now it's a great time after the pandemic. We see our country, or all other countries, start running again in order to take their lead in this new situation. What's your opinion on that?
So
please go on.
Yeah, so if I understand what you're saying, and that also relates to the discussion about the patents, and there should be a balance, first of all, I agree, but that should be dynamic and increasingly driven towards a frontier, so to speak, of improving efficacy, improving effectiveness and efficiency, not only in the technical sense, medical for that matter sense, but also in the policy and resource allocation sense. So people who invest, and private resources invested in R&D to develop, let's say, solutions that could be patented, should have some modicum and some measure of reward. At the same time, again, as I mentioned, the price of AstraZeneca, different animals in a way, technically, if you wish, but still, vaccines for COVID. One is priced 10 times as high or more than the other.
But the technology is different. mRNA is quite new technology, and somebody has to pay somehow for all
Yes.
the R&D
No. I
costs we
understand.
have already secured. We have
Yeah.
already.
I understand all that. I said already they're different animals, and so that implies also different approaches and different potentially costs. However, did Pfizer and BioNTech receive a lot of funding, most of it public, to develop their solutions or not? I mean, that's the question on which further action and consideration of options needs to be predicated. To go back to your other question about transition and the transformation.
I have an answer on that, if you please. In our symposium, Dr. Yankopoulos from Generon and Professor Altavanis, if I remember well, and the panel focused especially on the primary research to give money to find, let's say, the new technologies like mRNA in order to build the solutions and the technologies for the future, let's say, problems. You discuss about mRNA, for example, we have to find something to deal with this. There are a lot of open fronts. It seems that we have a lot of new tools, and the artificial intelligence help us a lot in order to understand the missing points. But at the end, we have to go back to the basic research.
So what is the answer? I'm not sure I follow you.
It's not my recommendation. Dr. Yankopoulos, Professor Aldavanis' recommendation
you mean public
more
funding
money to the basic research.
Yeah. So to be more explicit and align with our discussion, at least in my mind, to actually make sense. The idea is that public funding should be focused primarily, and it should be more of it perhaps, for basic research and development, and not co-financing of applied research and the development of working prototypes, so to speak, in the form of vaccines in this context. Is that what you're saying? What they said, anyway?
My personal view is quite different.
No, what you relate?
I mean, the governments should not have, let's say, may provide funds and grants and all these things, but there should be a different body that would allocate all these resources. I mean, government officials are not aware of what is technology. They are not aware of what is science.
Hold on.
How you can allocate resources for future scientifically unless you understand what is going over there. So you have to build the ecosystems, and we have to invite the correct. Let's speak about the Greek ecosystem. We have to invite the people like yourself, but also in the scientific part, to give us to develop the framework, and on the other hand, to give the guidelines and the directions where the money should be based. And on the other hand, we should be able, as an ecosystem, to invite the investors or the schemes over there to enhance and ameliorate our ecosystem. I'm not sure that the governments should have their role is not to make, let's say, who is going to get the grant or not.
Well, okay. Are there?
I mean, governments, like in the States, for example, they have last year you have in the States, passed a bill, an act for the 10 scientific, let's say, major scientific areas to focus on as an American, let's say, economy and society and whatever. This should be the same at for the Greek or any other, let's say, ecosystem. We are going to invest in artificial intelligence, this thing. We are going to invest in computational biology. We are going to invest, and that's all. And then you try to build this ecosystem with the correct, let's say, invitations. You have to nurture this kind of ecosystem.
Yeah, well,
in these tricks, we have a lot of scientists all over the world that we should take this our soft power as we used to say.
Are there any questions from the floor to address at this point?
Yes. Let me invite it's Georgios Karamanlidis. Let me. I gave mic, and I will invite on stage.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, nice conversation. I'm enjoying that. And actually, those topics are not very easy to answer. They're quite complex. And but with regard to vaccine, I work for Ant, and I don't have anything to do with vaccines. But previously, I worked for Pfizer as well. So with that to say, I've been in academia, I've been in industry, kind of like I have a mixed interactions. And I know this is a complex topic, and especially what's going on with the patents now, but we need to be careful what is the long-term goal, because one may solve a short-term problem but hurt deeply a long-term goal. Because if you right now remove the patents from the companies that invest, I know there's a public aspect to it as well, there's different ways to deal with that. But if you, let's say, companies invested that and say, okay, thank you for your investment right now, we're going to remove your patents, what do you think is going to happen in the future? Especially if there's no safety net for them, I'm going to put my investment in there. So
is that your question? Is that your question? Because we're trying. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. I don't like doing that, but I've been tried. Let's try and have a little bit more coherent interaction. So the point, if I understand, is what to do. I think what I was trying to say before, and I agree in essence with you. We need to be careful, and we have to have both the short-term and the long-term view in mind. And the challenge and the failure, in fact, in leadership in the public space right now is that needed action is not being taken, and in a way that actually will address as much as possible the short-term challenge, whereas safeguarding the long-term priorities. And there is a reason why patents were created as an incentive to take risks and invest in research and development. And with pharma, this is especially true. At the same time, some schemes for some kind of adjusted, limited, focused release or free licensing or what have you should be engaged, should be activated and fast, because in my mind, there is a real risk that what you referred to may happen, which is the extreme approach because of populism. So that's, I don't want to take more time on this.
Yep.
Are we in sync on this?
100%. Yeah, this is a delicate subject, and one can be on the extreme views in one side or the other side.
Yes.
But there is a solution that is needed for sure, and I think engaging in constructive dialogues is more constructive than actually just taking an extreme view and totalitarian.
By the way, as far as our research goes, for the last almost, as I said, 20 years, is about figuring out tools and modalities that may allow, and using AI now that may be even more possible, a rather dynamic and complex adjustment of schemes and means and frontiers. For instance, non-linear taxing schemes, and the same may apply to what a patent means. When Ben Franklin introduced them, and as they evolved over the decades and the centuries, they're rather still static and rigid scheme. So we need to figure out, and I hope there is going to be some movement. Any other, Theo, any other questions?
If I may add on this, I would say that at the end, we have to take into our consideration the general good, the public. This is first one, but we can, let's say, temporarily remove the patents and pay for this period in order to confront the situation of the pandemic.
There are more sophisticated schemes too.
Of course.
Yeah,
sure.
Please let me finish my sentence. In terms of hybrid public-private goods, and as I said, dynamic and complex configurations. Any other questions on the floor, please?
No, I don't see any other questions.
So then let's take this forward if there's nobody else, and thank you for listening. And to be more specific then to this discussion about having individual countries having very different approaches, who might be, if anybody wished to propose, who might be the appropriate entity? Would it be the WHO or who to actually try to convene a discussion and a dialogue that will be effective on this, rather than effectively having the different democracies become increasingly populist in this? And at the same time, in the meantime, places like India becoming incubators of mutations. Any thoughts?
The global government of WPO, I mean, should find, this is a question, how we can have the global governance and all these things. And given that we have quite different, let's say, perspectives, the Chinese or the Western societies. But for health issues, we should somehow find a solution and give WHO the privilege to deal with this situation.
Indeed, autocrats and democrats die together from the vaccine, from the virus, right? So, okay.
All right. If we have no other questions, we passed 8. We can end here. It was a great honor, and I really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you for your time and for this deep dive into innovation, entrepreneurship, ecosystems. And we would like to thanks again and our attendees, and we close our session here.
Thank you all for the time and the opportunity. Thank you, Theo.
Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye.